What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Louie T, here with another installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. It's Friday night, late night Louie edition. Looking forward to chopping it up with you. Game one of the NBA Finals is in the books. What did we learn? We'll talk about that. We'll preview game number 2 as well while we're here. Vikings released their Winter Warrior alternate white uniforms. We got to talk about them. And are they the coldest all whites in the NFL? We'll discuss that on the pod. And I want to do a check-in, take the temperature as we head into the final week of off-season work for these young rookie quarterbacks. Next week will be mandatory minis for just about every single team in the NFL. That last phase of the off-season program. Where do we stand? Where do these rookies stack up? Where are they in their progression? Are they trending towards starting in week 1 or at least heading to camp as QB1? We'll talk about where all these guys are in the process as well tonight and more. You're locked into the LouieTeeNetwork podcast that starts now. The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 424th installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. I, of course, am your stepman, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you guys kicking it with the kid on this Friday night. You could be anywhere right now. You could be doing anything right now, but you're here with me chopping it up, and I greatly appreciate that. So we're going to make this a great show, make it worth your while and your time. So before we get to any of the proceedings this evening, you know what it is. We got to jump into the NBA Finals and talk about Game 1. Then we'll get into previewing Game 2 and what I expect from that particular contest and how we feel going into, the series, the weekend with the series and what I expect to happen moving forward. So with that said, Game 1 was not surprising from this standpoint. The Celtics shot the 3. What a surprise, right? Like, I talked about this already going into the series. I gave you the numbers. I said if the Celtics, and I think they ended up shooting 41 attempts from distance. Let me double check just to be on the safe side. I think they made 16 threes, and I think they shot 41 of them, if I'm not mistaken, in Game 1. Let's check and see. So the Celtics shot 42 threes and made 16 of them. So I told you the number is 43 that I expect them to attempt. And I said, on average, I expect them to shoot 43 threes a game because that's just what they do, right? And the hope is that they miss. If you're playing the Celtics, it's not, are they going to take a night off from shooting the 3? Because they're going to shoot it every single night. The question isn't if they're going to shoot it, is if they're going to make them or not. I think Jason Kidd said something that is very, very true in this series. He said, I hope this comes down to a 2-point series. Who makes the most 2s, not who makes the most 3s, because he knows if it comes down to who makes the most 3s, he doesn't stand a chance. Him or his Mavericks don't stand a chance in this series. So, per usual, Celtics hoisted 42 threes. They made 16 of them. That's almost 40%. That's going to be tough. I told you the magic number for the Celtics is 15. If they can get to 15 threes, it's going to give them a really good chance to win. It doesn't guarantee them victory. It just gives them a very good chance to win. They knocked down 16 of them. It's going to be tough to beat them, especially when you, as the Mavericks, only make 7 of your 27 threes that you attempted. You're outscored by 27 points at the 3-point line in a game that you lost by 19 you do the math, right? So it's going to be tough if you can't make more shots from behind the arc. And it's not like the Mavericks didn't have good looks. Kyrie himself had about 3 or 4 wide open looks with not a single Celtic in sight, and he couldn't knock any of them down. So it's a make or miss league. Kyrie was awful from a perspective of making shots. So that's the byproduct of that. What I did not foresee was the impact that Kristaps Porzingis would have in his first game back in, what are we talking about, a month and a half, maybe? I mean, the NBA playoffs start, what, in early May? So a month, roughly a month. They said he hadn't played in 10 games, I think it was. He played in the first 2 games of the Heat series. I think he got hurt. They were at home when he got hurt, I believe. So I think they were at home. Whatever the case may be, I think he missed 10 games. And so the expectation for him was low minutes because he wasn't going to be in basketball shape, which you could see he was huffing and puffing. The expectation was he'd be a little rusty. You know, the shot wouldn't necessarily fall early and he'd have to find a rhythm. Nah, my man jumped right in the game and went ape shit. 5 of his first 6, 18 quick points in 11 minutes in the first half. Are you kidding me? And it wasn't just on the offensive end where he couldn't miss. It was the defensive impact that he had as well. He came in and immediately had 3 blocks. I think his stat line in his first 8 minutes of play was 11 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 blocks in like 8 minutes. It was ridiculous what he was doing. He changed everything. I think the Mavericks started the game something like 7 for their first 9. They were right there. They were shooting well. I think they were like 9 of their first 13 or 14 or something like that. They were right there. They were shooting a high percentage. The score, they were up 1 when he entered the game. I think it was 23-22 or something of that ilk. And then Porzingis came in and the floodgates opened. He went off. His defense helped spur runs. Hauser's knocking 3. I talked about Hauser, right? Like Sam Hauser, in whatever minutes he plays, he's got to be effective. Not only was he effective as a shooter, he came in and played quality defense on Luka Doncic. And you know you're going to see a bunch of different bodies at Luka. And another thing that I talked about was that you're going to tire Luka out defensively. Like, you're going to make him work. In the last series against the Timberwolves, he was able to hide defensively on the 3-and-D guy in the corner, which was Jaden McDaniels, and not have to do anything. So offensively, he had all of his energy. He didn't have to expend much of it defensively. So he was able to help kind of just hang around in the corner, you know, cool out defensively. And so that benefited them. That's not going to happen in this series. He's going to have to guard everybody. You know, whoever he's covering, they're going to make him work. And you saw that they kept putting him in pick and rolls. They kept forcing the switch. And they, you know, and I thought Luka stood up as tall as he could, right? But he's still Luka Doncic, right? So he's still going to struggle, you know, somewhat defensively. And it's not like the Celtics don't have guys that can get into the paint anyway, you know, but they're making him work. And they knocked down shots in the first half, built that crazy lead. They were up. I mean, they went off at the end of the first quarter. It was crazy because this, again, Mavs were up 1. And then if you blinked, it was 37-20. I think it was 37-20 at the end of the first quarter. 17-point lead, the largest lead in NBA history, NBA Finals history, at the end of the first quarter of a game 1. It might have just been of an NBA Finals game in general. But, I mean, it just happened so quick, so fast, right? And it really was Porzingis's energy and activity that spurred that run. And I didn't see that coming. I thought he'd be a big factor. Remember, I was, you know, chastising, you know, a couple of my buddies who thought he shouldn't, you know, they don't need him to win. And I was like, what are you talking about? Are you serious right now? Clearly you haven't watched the Celtics all season long, right? Like, he's the X factor. He's the guy that has changed everything. And Porzingis is your fourth best player. That's crazy. That's how good the Boston Celtics roster is. But anyway, his impact was massive in this first game. And to think he's just warming up. He's just figuring it, getting back into the swing of things. And he was not fazed by the stage. He was not fazed by fatigue. He was not fazed by having not played in over 3 or 4 weeks. So his contributions were massive. They shot it well overall as a team, 38% from deep. They knocked down 16 threes. They checked all the boxes. Defensively, I thought that's where they won this game, is they got after the Dallas Mavericks defensively. Now, again, I thought the Mavericks had open looks. Guys like P.J. Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. and even Kyrie Irving had open looks at the basket from the three-point line and simply could not get it to go down. And again, I don't expect that to be the case all series long. You continue to let Luka and Kyrie get into the paint, penetrate and kick. Those guys get open looks. Eventually, they're going to knock some of those shots down, and it's going to change the complexity of the game and potentially the series. That said, game one went the way that I thought it could go from this standpoint. If the Celtics knock down shots, they can win. And that's any game in the series, not just game one. I've talked about this already. They make threes, they're not going to lose. I see Tatum was more of a facilitator in game one. He didn't have to be a massive scorer. I think right now, looking at the series, Jaylen Brown is going to have to be the MVP of the series if the Celtics are to win the Larry O'Brien trophy and hang up banner 18. He just seems like the guy that's doing it all right now. When the Mavericks made that push and cut it to 8, and you could hear a pin drop in the Garden, it was Jaylen Brown that said, okay, enough of this. We're shooting a bunch of threes. They're not falling like they were in the first half. Offense is getting stale. We're not sharing the basketball. All right, I got it. He put his head down. He got to the rim. He got fouled. He got to the free throw line. And he was the one that broke up that monotonous tension that was starting to build and allowing the Mavericks to get back into the game. It was him who got aggressive, who went to the rack, who got fouled, who got to the free throw line, who then kind of spurred that. He had like 2 or 3 blocks during that same stretch when they stretched it. This thing got all the way down to 8. And then before you had a chance to blink, it was back to 22 before the end of the third quarter. It was so crazy how it happened. The Mavericks worked so hard to cut this thing down to 8 with about 4 minutes left in the third. And then Jaylen Brown took it upon himself to get aggressive, attack the rim, go to the free throw line. He blocked 2 or 3 shots, got the crowd involved. And next thing you know, they hit a few threes and bam, the lead was back to 22. And it was a lot of it was Jaylen Brown. So to me right now, on both ends of the basketball, he is the guy that is kind of carrying this Celtics team. He's the emotional leader right now, it feels like. And I think that's going to have to continue if they're going to win this series, which I expect them to. I've already said that. But I expect the Mavericks to bounce back and win game 2. I already told you I expect them to win one of these first 2 games. If you're the Celtics, you couldn't allow them to win both. So you got the hard part out of the way, which was making sure that you took care of business, at least in one of the 2 games. I expect the Mavericks to bounce back. I've seen this from them already. They did it in the first series against the Clippers. Remember, the Clippers blew them out in game 1, made them look non-competitive. And then they came back and they stole game 2. They did the same thing to OKC. OKC took care of business game 1, and it was pretty handily, I may add, if I'm not mistaken. And then Dallas took care of business in game 2, ended up winning the next 3 games, if I'm not mistaken, got up 3-1 on them. OKC went back, won game 5, and then Dallas finished them up in game number 6. So I expect them to bounce back as they've done in the previous 2 series and win game number 2 on the road. That's what they've done. That's been their calling card in their signature. I expect them to shoot much better than 7 of 27 from deep. I expect them to now have adjusted to being on the road. They knew it was going to be a hostile environment. They knew that the Celtics were going to feed off that energy. They knew all of that, and it's still hard to prepare for that, right? Now they've had a chance to adjust. They understand what the mission is. They understand the environment that they're playing in. A lot of those nerves that you have playing in the NBA Finals for the first time, if you're PJ Washington, if you're Derrick Jones Jr., a lot of those guys who haven't been on that stage, hell, even Luka Doncic, who didn't necessarily start the game off all that great. I thought he had a much better second and third quarter. For those guys, I think you settle in now. Kyrie has to carry his weight, and he will, right? Like, we've seen him shoot poorly and then bounce back and have a tremendous game. So I expect the Mavericks to shoot it better. I expect the Celtics to not shoot it as well, right? A lot of those shots that, I mean, Hauser had one shot where he didn't even bring the ball down. He caught it right here in the pocket, in the shooting pocket, and didn't bring it down. He just kept it there and then just shot it. Like, you know how hard that is to do? And he knocked that down. Like, they made a lot of tough shots. Tatum hit a rainbow three with the defender right in his face. Like, they knocked down some tough threes, did the Celtics. They also missed some open shots that you expect them to hit. All in all, I think they're going to, make 11 or 12 threes, which isn't enough for them, right? The number I said is 15 for them to have a legitimate chance to win. If they get to 18, which is the next magic number, they're probably going to win. Anything over 20, and it's a done deal. You don't stand a chance, right? So 16, put them in that neighborhood of where they need to be to win. And then they got the defensive stops, which is, I thought their defense was just outstanding in the game. It's honestly why they won the game. We could talk about the shooting. We could talk about, Porzingis and the lift that he gave them. We can talk about so many different things, but when it's all said and done, it was their defensive intensity that won them game one. It was their ability to make the Mavericks work on the offensive end. It was their ability to block their shots. They stole the ball from them. Kyrie dribbling the ball off of his foot. They ripped Luka for an easy layup. Their defensive intensity, I didn't think the Mavericks matched that in game one. And so we'll see. And they stopped all the lobs. I don't recall the Mavericks having, any lobs in the game. Maybe they had one, but I don't recall them having any lobs. They made them work for every single thing that they got. And if they can continue to do that, they're going to make it really tough on the Mavericks. But I expect Dallas to make more shots. Of the 27 threes that they had, they made only 7. I think there were probably another 7 or 8 that were wide open attempts that they just didn't knock down, right? And I talk about this all the time. It's a make or miss league. Dallas isn't going to shoot 43 threes like Boston is. So they've got to make the most of the attempts that they do take. And if you're going to take 27 threes, you're going to have to make, 12 or 13 of those threes to give yourself a realistic shot. Hell, make 10 or 11 of them, right? Cut that deficit down. And I think Boston's going to come back closer to the pack in game 2. They're not going to make 16 or 17 threes. I don't believe it. If they do it again, it's going to be tough for them to win in game 2. I just think they're going to miss some of those shots that they hit in game 1. Porzingis isn't going to go crazy like he did in game number 1. They made some adjustments in the second half, made it a little bit tougher on Boston, which is what allowed them to crawl back into the game. Also, Boston missed some open looks themselves. But at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. It's a make or miss league. You're going to make shots. You're going to miss shots. It happens. And so I just expect Boston to miss more. I expect Dallas to make more. And I expect the Mavericks to go into Boston game 2, steal it, send the series back to Dallas, tied up at 1. And then that's when the series really begins. And I expect Boston to go back over there and take care of business, get one of those games, if not both of them. I don't see Dallas allowing Boston to take both of them in Dallas, but they are going to go over there and get one back, right? Because that's who they are. I told you I think this is a 7-game series. I think they're going to split at home. Boston is going to take care of them in 5. Dallas is going to win 6, and then Boston's going to have to win it in 7. That's what I see happening. I don't see any way that Dallas wins this series in 6. But if they are to win this series, it would have to be in 6. I don't see them winning a decisive game 7 on the road in Boston. But I told you, if there's one guy in the league that I know doesn't give a damn about your home court advantage in a game 7, who's very disrespectful in a game 7 environment, it's Luka Doncic. He's as cold-blooded as it gets. So if you allow this thing to get to that situation, he could go for 48 and beat you on your home floor, if you're the Celtics. So you would like to not allow this series to get there. We'll see what game 2 looks like. If Boston takes care of them convincingly once again, which I don't see happening, but if they do that again, I'd have to see what game 3 looks like. But if they were able to get them in game 2 convincingly again, obviously we know how teams play when they go home. You know how those others play. I call them bench bums, but the others, you know how that goes. You can see, the intensity kick up for Dallas, get their home crowd involved, and all of a sudden they are the ones knocking down the threes. They're the ones making all of those hustle plays, and they're the ones crashing the boards. Boston also beat them up on the boards, especially early in the game. They're the ones blocking shots and, doing all of those things that get the crowd involved. So you expect to see that shift when you go to Dallas in game 3. And so we'll see exactly how it goes. For me, if you're Dallas, you got to get game 2. You don't want to fall down 0-2 going back home, because Boston is going to win one of those 2 games. Trust me, they're going to steal one of those games in Dallas. You can't afford to drop down 0-2, because if they steal one, now you're down 3-1, and this series could be over in 5. So we'll see what happens. But it's been a hell of a playoffs for the Dallas Mavericks. They're going to need guys to step up if they are to compete with Boston in this series. And I'm not fazed by game 1's outcome. I'm not fazed at all. I've seen them do this before. This is their move. Just like Boston's move is to lose one of the first 2 home games. Usually it's game 2, right? If they're going to lose one, it's usually game 2. But because I think, if I'm not mistaken, they lost game 2 to Cleveland. They lost game 2 to Miami. And they should have lost game 1, as we already talked about, to Indiana. So their move is to lose one of the first 2 games at home. Then they go and clean up on the road. This isn't, Indiana, Miami, or Cleveland, though, right? It's a different animal you're dealing with here with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic and company. But I expect them to still win this series. But I expect Dallas to bounce back and win game 2. We'll see what happens. So let's get to the next segment of the show in the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I want to talk about the young rookie quarterbacks that were selected. 6 of them, count them, 6 of them were selected in the first 12 picks of the 2024 NFL draft. We've never seen anything quite like that before. Remember, the first 14 players selected in the draft were all offensive players. We did not have our first defensive player selected until 15th overall by the Indianapolis Colts. So it was one of the most unique drafts in NFL history. 6 of the first 12 selections were quarterbacks. So on average, every other pick was a quarterback, which is insane. And I listened to the Seahawks general manager, John Schneider, on the Insiders. He was on with Ian Rappaport and all of those guys talking about why they made the decision to trade for Sam Howell. And he said what it ultimately boiled down to was, we looked at the board, we looked at the quarterbacks that were going to be available, and we thought to ourselves, there's a realistic shot that 6 quarterbacks were drafted ahead of us. I think Seattle had the 16th pick or something to that effect. And he said, there's a realistic chance that all 6 of the quarterbacks that we were considering would be gone by the time we selected at 16. And so we just went ahead and we were proactive. We went out and got a guy that had a really good game against us last year in Sam Howell, and we feel good about him. So it just goes to show you that a lot of teams around the league already knew that this was going to be a heavy quarterback draft class in the first round. I couldn't imagine, because I've never seen that kind of activity at the quarterback position that early before. I just couldn't imagine 6 quarterbacks going in the first 12 picks, but it just shows you just how deep this particular draft class was and the necessity to try to find the guy, right? It's imperative if you're going to have any success in this league. And with that said, let's check in on these young guys and see how they're faring, because, you know, in most of these instances outside of Chicago, where they've already named Caleb Williams QB1, most of these quarterbacks are going to have to earn it, right? Nobody's being given anything. The Bears already know what, you know, they're doing with Caleb Williams. They already knew that that was their guy, and they're not trying to hide it. He's played well in OTAs to this point. They feel really good about the command that he's showing of the offense, how accurate he's been. He's showing the leadership qualities that they felt like he would be able to display when they drafted him. So everything's going well for him in Chicago right now. They feel really good. They have no buyer's remorse at this current juncture. They've already named him QB1. He's the only rookie quarterback to have that distinction at this point, and they're feeling really good about what he's going to potentially provide for them this upcoming season. So as we head into the final week of off-season work, Caleb Williams is the only rookie quarterback to have the QB1 label placed on him to this point, which is to be expected. We knew that the Bears were all in on Caleb Williams, as they should be, and so he has not disappointed to this point. You move on to the second pick in the draft, and that's Jayden Daniels, and he's had a similar type of start to his career in the NFL thus far. Really, really poised, has shown a lot of promise as a leader. Showing up to the facility early, leaving late. He's put in the work. He's started to foster relationships with some of his teammates. So they're really, really excited about some of the leadership qualities that he's shown already. They've talked about his work ethic. He's a guy that has put in tireless amounts of work to this point, which is also something that is impressive for a young guy. And then they've talked about his accuracy. They've talked about the ball barely hitting the ground for much of OTAs with Jayden Daniels. Now, he hasn't been taking a bulk of the first team reps. He has taken some of the first team reps, but he's not taking all of them, which they said when they drafted him, they were going to make him earn it. It was going to be a competitive camp throughout the entire roster, not just with the quarterback position, but at every single position. They were going to make these guys compete. And you're going to take this young guy. You got Marcus Mariota in there. You have him competing, showing him the ropes. I think by the time we get to August, training camp starts at the end of July. By the time we get to August, I think you'll start to see the shift in Jayden Daniels being QB1, taking the bulk of the first team reps. And I think by the time you get to preseason game 1, he'll be the starter. He'll be in there. And I think you go from there if you're the Washington Commanders. And I think that's where you're trending right now. He's not QB1 yet, but I think by the time you get to either training camp itself or by the time you get to August and the calendar turns from July to August, I think you'll see Jayden Daniels christened QB1. They'll give him the reins, and then he goes from there. And then you just kind of have whatever happens, and you live with the results, right? He's trending in that direction. So all has gone well for Jayden Daniels to this point, and he's right on schedule if you're a Washington Commanders fan. You go to the next selection in third overall. First 3 picks were all quarterbacks. As we know, New England Patriots took quarterback Drake May out of North Carolina. The Patriots, we all saw the writing on the wall. We all talked about this leading up to the draft, that it was important to really have a strong quarterback room if you were drafting Drake May, because probably wasn't going to be ready to start day 1, right? That's no secret. Anybody that took Drake May knew that it was going to be a little while before he was ready to come onto the field and help you in any way, shape, or form. So the Patriots had already prepared. They had already went out and signed Jacoby Brissett in free agency, and new head coach of the New England Patriots, Gerard Mayo, had already said earlier that it was a work in progress. Like, he was putting in work, and he was doing everything they had asked of him, and he was staying late, and he was putting in the extra reps, but it was going to take time, right? And he had a ways to go. And so that raised some eyebrows for some, those people who, weren't paying attention all, draft process long and weren't really locked into what drafting Drake May was going to mean, they were somewhat surprised. But for us who have obsessed over the draft and knew that taking Drake May was going to require some time, patience, and effort, we knew that that's pretty much the standard operating procedure for a guy like Drake May. You don't want to rush him, throw him out there too soon, throw him to the wolves if he's not ready, and end up having a Zach Wilson type of effect, right? We've seen young quarterbacks be destroyed because they were thrown out there before they were ready and their confidence was shot because of it. So the Patriots right now have named Jacoby Brissett QB1. They've already done that officially. So now the question becomes, and this was always the thing, was when is Drake May going to be realistically ready to see the field? I don't anticipate the Patriots being very good this year. I expect them to be much more competitive than they were last season. But that said, when can we, and we looked at their schedule already, and we talked about, like, when is a good time? You want his first start to come at home, right? You want it to be against an opponent that isn't going to overwhelm him. You would like it to be, at least. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when that is on the schedule, because every single time that they get that home game when you're thinking, okay, this is a good spot, like somewhere in that week 6 to 8 range, it's a tough team, right? It's a really good defense, like it's the Jets or somebody. And you're like, yeah, I don't want him playing against them in his first start. So then you go, okay, when's the next one? And then the next one's like week 10, but it's still a really good defense. And you're like, yeah, I'm not really too sure I want that to be the game. And then because then you find yourself going further and further into the season. And at some point you're like, look, we can't keep pushing this back and delaying the inevitable. At some point you have to put him on the field. So they'll figure out when the time is right. They're the ones there with him at practice every day, and they'll figure out if he's ready or not. And also where the Patriots are in their season will go a long way in determining when they'll pull the plug on Jacoby Brissett and go ahead and start the Drake May experiment. But he's shown flashes in the OTAs of why they drafted him number 3 overall. He's also shown exactly why they're not going to put him out there more likely than not week 1 or the first month or 2 of the season for that matter. So I think a lot of what's gone on with Drake May has gone pretty much according to script at this point. You know, you thought he was going to need some time. The Patriots agree with that assessment. And it looks like Jacoby Brissett is going to be QB1 heading into camp. And more likely than not, barring some kind of catastrophe, he'll be QB1 heading in to the start of the regular season as well. Yeah, you go on to the next quarterback that was selected. And this was a bit of a surprise. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons taking quarterback Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington shocked everybody. It was the biggest shock of the 2024 NFL draft. I don't think anything topped Michael Penix Jr. to the Falcons at 8. No one saw it coming. They signed Kirk Cousins to a massive contract in the offseason. Everyone felt like their eggs were all in the Kirk Cousins basket, and still they went out and drafted a quarterback. And again, Michael Penix Jr., of all the quarterbacks, had been in college the longest. He's the oldest. You would think that he'd be the most ready to start. So to put him in a situation where you draft him and put him behind a veteran that you don't have any intentions of benching, he's your long-term solution at the quarterback for the next, 3 years or so, in the short term rather. And Kirk Cousins, their general manager has already come out and said, hey, if Michael doesn't have to see the field for the next 4 years, then we've done something right. And everybody's like, no, that you haven't done anything right. If that happens, you've delayed, the process and the growth of a quarterback who's already like 24 years old. And if he doesn't see the field till he's 28 or 29, shame on you, right? That's how most people view it. I mean, if he comes in and he crushes it once he gets his opportunity, then, nobody will care how long he had to sit. If it turns into a Jordan Love or an Aaron Rodgers type situation, nobody will care. But the difference is those guys came into the league at 21, 22 years old. So if you sit for 4 years, 3-4 years, you're still only 25 or 26. This guy will be almost 30 years old. So it's a little bit different. But with the rules set up the way that they are, at the end of the day, no one's going to care if he plays really well. That said, there's no chance in hell of Michael Penix Jr. seeing the field in his rookie season for the Atlanta Falcons unless something happens to Kirk Cousins. Again, Cousins did miss over half of the season last year with a torn ACL, or was it an Achilles? I don't recall which it was, but it was a lower extremity injury and a major one that required surgery. So there is that standpoint of things like, hey, Kirk is coming off of an injury and anything can happen. But if Kirk is to bounce back, and all signs point to him bouncing back, and he plays well and plays the way that we know he's capable of, Michael Penix Jr. won't see the field. So, his situation's a little rough, still a bit of a surprise. Terry Fontenot kind of was thinking outside of the box there. I think he went a little bit too far outside of the box, but maybe it ultimately benefits them. I always felt like they should have drafted Justin Fields and not Kyle Pitts. Maybe they're overcompensating for that. Maybe they felt like we blew it the last time when we had Matt Ryan and we didn't want to step on Matt's toes. We wanted to get him a weapon. And instead we drafted Kyle Pitts, and we should have took Justin Fields. And I was an advocate for that because I said, you don't know when you're going to be up there again. Right. And I think that was their mindset, which was, hey, we're drafting at 8. We don't expect to be this high in the draft again. We don't know when we'll have another opportunity to get a quarterback of this caliber. We had a chance a few years ago with Justin Fields. We passed on it. And now we find ourselves in this position because we didn't take Fields. Who knows what he would have turned into, but I like to think that with the weapons that they have and the offense that they were running, Fields would have been a great fit, but that's nor here nor there. They just said to themselves, we don't plan on drafting this high again. And if Kirk Cousins is who we signed him up to be, we won't be drafting this high again. We play in a pretty bad division. We should be one of the better teams in that division every year. Thus, we'll be picking in the 20s. We won't have a shot to get a guy like this again. We got to take him. I understand that thought process. It just took everyone by surprise. So you go to the next guy that was selected, and of the 6 quarterbacks, 4 of them realistically felt like they had a shot to start week 1, right? Your number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. Your number 2 overall pick, Jaden Daniels. Your number, I think the Vikings went up 1 pick. So were they 10? I believe they were 10th overall pick in JJ McCarthy, and the 12th overall pick in Bo Nix. Those 4 guys felt like they had realistic shots to start week 1. The other 2, Drake May and Michael Penix Jr., didn't feel like realistic week 1 starters, right? So it's surprising to me thus far because JJ McCarthy is this, Alex Smith type of guy. And maybe it shouldn't be that much of a surprise because Alex Smith himself, who we largely comp him to, right? A more dynamic, stronger armed, more willing risk taker, Alex Smith type quarterback is what we view him as. And if that's in fact the case, maybe he is made to struggle right out of the gate, initially. And it's not a surprise when you talk about young quarterbacks and them coming into a system and having to learn that system, having to, adjust to the speed of the NFL and kind of get all the nuances and kind of figure things out. And you got a veteran in front of you who's been in the league, played in multiple systems, so he's very comfortable. It's not a surprise that Sam Darnold is outperforming JJ McCarthy at Minnesota Vikings OTAs thus far. And not only is McCarthy not sniffing any first-team reps, essentially Darnold's been taking all of the first-team reps, but Nick Mullins is taking most of the second-team reps, right? Any of the mop-up first-team reps and most of the second-team reps are going to Nick Mullins. And then J.J. McCarthy is getting on the field as the third-string quarterback ahead of only Jaren Hall, who's bringing up the rear as the 4th quarterback in Minnesota right now. So those are the reports coming out of Minnesota that, it's not that McCarthy just looks horrible. It just, the other guys are just more prepared and look more ready to help facilitate the offense at this current juncture. And so what you're hoping if you're a Vikings fan is that at some point during the summer that changes and there's a drastic shift in what's going on, because you're not winning anything of substance with Sam Darnold or Nick Mullins, right? Everyone knows that, and no one wants to waste a season. Like, if we're going to lose, you'd much rather lose with the rookie in there. Now, with that said, similar conversation to Drake May, you do not want to put a young quarterback out there until he is ready. And they know if JJ McCarthy is ready or not. And so we'll see how long it takes him to get to at least where he's the second QB. Like, the scariest part of what I've heard coming out of Vikings camp right now is that he's not even better than Nick Mullins. Again, granted, Mullins, veteran quarterback, played in a system that's very similar to the one that Kevin O'Connell runs, because Nick Mullins was drafted in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, so he's very familiar. He's been in Minnesota now, I believe, for the last 3 seasons. I think this will be year 3 for Nick Mullins in Minnesota, so he knows the offense front and back. It's very comfortable. Sam Darnold came from San Francisco last season, so again, coming from a system very similar to the one that Kevin O'Connell runs, so he's very comfortable. So I'm not shocked that he's a little bit behind the 8 ball, but at some point, I need him to overtake Nick Mullins in getting those second team reps. And, you know, look, you may not overtake Sam Darnold, and Darnold may be the week 1 starter in Minnesota. And right now, as we head to the final week of, mandatory, or the final week of the offseason program, and we start tracking towards training camp, it seems like Sam Darnold is in the driver's seat for QB1. And right now, Nick Mullins may be in the driver's seat for QB2. Even if you don't get to week 1 starter, if you're rookie quarterback JJ McCarthy, you'd love to get to at least QB2. All right. That's where you need to find yourself by the time we get to the end of the summer and we start preparing for September and the turn of the calendar and the start of the season. You need to be at least in a position where they're comfortable enough with you and you're comfortable enough with taking those mental reps and preparing yourself in the event that something happens to Sam Darnold, because as we know, Darnold is a quarterback that will get injured. So you need to be ready. Do they trust JJ? We'll find a lot out about JJ McCarthy and how they feel about him and where he is from a progress standpoint by where he ends up being on the depth chart as we get closer to the start of the season. But right now, he's QB3 in Minnesota. A little bit of a surprise for me. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not shocked that Darnold is out in front. I thought he would be at least splitting reps with Nick Mullins, not having Mullins take most of the second team reps. So that is a bit of a surprise. What shouldn't surprise me is that Mullins has been in the offense. He's way more comfortable. He's a veteran, so he should look better. So that isn't a surprise, but I still thought McCarthy would, just off of sheer talent alone and the ability to come in there and assimilate better, I thought he'd be at least QB2 by now. And then lastly, Bo Nix was taken 12th overall by the Denver Broncos, the 6th and final rookie quarterback taken in the first round. He was another guy that I thought would have a chance to start. And right now, I think he's trending in that direction. So the 3 quarterbacks in Denver currently are the aforementioned Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, who finished up the season last year as the starter when they benched Russell Wilson. Very unimpressive in those 2 starts. And Sean Payton knew at that moment, I got to go get a guy. And remember, the Broncos also traded for former number 2 overall pick, Zach Wilson from the New York Jets. So he is now in Denver, in case you might have forgotten. So those are the quarterbacks in Denver right now. And of those 3, Nix has been very impressive. Sean Payton has been impressed with what he's seen. Obviously, there's some growth and some things that Bo Nix has to adjust and adapt to. Payton talked about, the speed of the game, some of the length of the defenders, the windows being not as open as they were in college, which we talk about, especially in that Oregon offense. It feels like every quarterback at Oregon benefits from these ridiculous windows that are wide ass open, that allow for easy completions, almost pitch and catch style. And so he talked about, him having to adjust to tighter windows in the NFL. But I said all along, if you were to ask me what was the best QB coach fit of all of the quarterbacks and all of the coaches who were looking to upgrade their quarterback position, I told you numerous times over the course of the spring that it was Bo Nix to Denver with Sean Payton, because Bo Nix to me is a Drew Brees type of quarterback, right? Much bigger version of Drew Brees. Brees was barely 6 feet. Bo Nix is roughly 6'2"-ish, trending towards 6'3", and similar arm talent, not the strongest arm in the world, but extremely accurate underneath, can throw the deep ball if given the opportunity. And so I think Sean Payton's been impressed because he sees a lot of those same qualities in Bo Nix that he saw in Drew Brees, which is why he wanted him, right? I think they were blowing a lot of smoke during the process, trying to get people to trade up for other quarterbacks, steer clear of Bo Nix so that he would just fall into their lap. I really don't think anybody else was planning on taking Bo Nix, but they just had to make sure, right? I think he was always the guy in Denver, and Sean Payton's been impressed to this point. He's played well. He's shown flashes of why they selected him. He also shows that he needs growth, but all of these young quarterbacks need growth, right? All of them need the, TLC, right? And Bo Nix is no different. I think he's in the best spot he could have landed in. I think Peyton's going to take good care of him. I think he's going to end up being their QB1 week 1. I don't see Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson beating him out. As long as he continues to trend in the right direction, which he's been doing all offseason long, I see him trending towards being QB1 heading into training camp. And I think he's going to be your week 1 starter of the preseason. And if things go well over the course of the summer, I think he is trending towards being QB1 week 1. So right now, of the 6 quarterbacks, I think 3 of them are trending towards being week 1 starters, which I thought 4 of them would ultimately be week 1 starters. That could still be the case, but right now it seems more likely that only 3 of them may end up in the driver's seat come week 1. Obviously, Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick to the Chicago Bears. Jaden Daniels, number 2 overall to the Washington Commanders. And Bo Nix, the 6th and final quarterback taken in the first round to the Denver Broncos, seems like the 3rd and final of the 6 quarterbacks that may be a week 1 starter after looking at what's transpired early on in the OTAs and offseason work. Again, don't count out J.J. McCarthy yet in Minnesota, but it's trending towards Sam Darnold starting the season off. Of that secondary group, meaning they don't start week 1, but, getting off the bench, who will be the first one off the bench? I'd say it'd be J.J. McCarthy right now. It's not going to be Drake May, more likely than not. And, you never know what happens with Kirk Cousins. It could be Michael Penix Jr. But if Kirk's healthy, it's not going to be Penix. If Brissett is healthy, it won't be May. It'll probably be J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota. If things start to go a little rough for Sam Darnold, they could turn to the rookie, sooner rather than later. But he's got to get to QB2 first before we can have that conversation. So that's where the quarterbacks are right now as we check up on them. And we'll have another checkup on them as we get to training camp later on, as we get into the summer, and see what these guys are up to and see if everything that we've talked about here today on June 7th holds up, 2 months from now, 2.5 months from now, as we've had 2 or 3 preseason games under our belt, and see where these guys kind of sit as we head into the start of the regular season. So let's get to social media maneuvers. I'm a midnight marauder. Y'all know how it is. Y'all know what it is. Let's get to the comment section. Y'all know how this works. And for those of you who don't know how this works, it's very simple. If you want your comment read on the air, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent, we will discuss it if time permits. If you want to jump to the front of the line and ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to do so. Use the super chat function, put in your comment. We will discuss that first and foremost and have dialogue about your super chat. If you want to have your comment read, again, use the hashtag LouieTeeLive. If time permits, which it should, we've gotten through to this portion of the show rather quickly. So I think we'll have some time to chop it up. So start lining up those hashtags if you're out there, you want your comment to be read. Now, again, can't assure you of how much time I'll spend on some of these supers. Sometimes I can get a little bit loquacious. And then the next thing you know, you look up, we've been on for 2 hours and you're like, let's just go to the garbage time, right? So anyway. Let's get to the comment section. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. It's been a little while, David. It's good to hear from you, man. Says, what's up, Louie? What's going on, David? Says, what's your best guess on the starting O-line depth chart? I was trying to get a sneak peek at who the offensive lineman that they, had out there with the first, and it really doesn't matter right now. Like, I don't want to put too much because they haven't put the pads on yet. So as we know, they've been platooning guys in and out and, kind of working different groups together, trying to get as many bodies out there as they can. But when it's all said and done, I think they have in their minds who's going to be the starters at every position except for left tackle. I do think there is a legitimate battle taking place right now between the rookie third-round pick out of TCU, Brandon Coleman, and, of course, the incumbent, or I shouldn't say incumbent because he wasn't the starter last year, but Cornelius Lucas, who has been here the last, 2 seasons? Is it 2 or 3 seasons he's been here? So I think it's 3 because he signed a 2-year deal when he first got here, and then we just re-signed him on a 1-year deal this offseason to come back. So this will be year 3 for Cornelius Lucas on the roster. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at left tackle. But I think write everything in pencil except for center and right guard, right? Write everything else in pencil. Those 2 you can write in magic marker if you'd like, all right? Write it in pen, write it in marker, whatever. Those guys are starting, right? At center, Tyler Biotish, a.k.a. Tyler Badass, is starting at center. And, of course, Sam Cosmi is starting at right guard. So those 2 off limits, we don't worry about those. It's left tackle, left guard, and then right tackle. I'm almost ready to write Andrew Wiley in at right tackle in pen, which breaks my heart, but I think that's going to transpire and that's going to happen. So I think if I had to guess, the left tackle and left guard positions are the ones that are going to really be up for grabs. Nick Allegretti, I think, is going to get the first opportunity at left guard. So to me, somebody's going to have to beat him out. They brought him in here to challenge for that left guard position. I think they're going to give him every opportunity to win it, and we'll see if he gets it done or not. I think there are other guys that would love to get their hands on that position, like Ricky Stromberg, who Washington selected last year in the 3rd round. I've seen him at center as well in some of the clips that they've had. So we'll see where they work some of these young guys, but ultimately, we've talked about the depth chart and what we think is going to take place. We did a Command Post live video, David, about maybe a month ago. It was right after the draft. It was like post-draft depth chart. Go find that video. And if you want to see what we ultimately decided on for the offensive line and the depth of that offensive line and what we think is going to look like, that video will pretty much tell you how most of us feel about that. But if I had to guess, I'll just tell you across the board, I think it's going to ultimately be Brandon Coleman at left tackle. And again, Cornelius Lucas could beat him out. And I don't have a problem with either one, to be honest with you. I'd rather see the young fella get in there And I'd rather have Cornelius Lucas at right tackle, but they're not going to do that. So Brandon Coleman at left tackle, Nick Allegretti at left guard, Tyler Biadasz at center, Sam Cosmi at right guard, and Andrew Wiley more likely than not at right tackle. So that's what I think is going to happen. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Chris, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Greatly appreciate you as always. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise, as always. 2 questions. 1, what are your thoughts on Dan Hurley for the Lakers head coach position, or would you stay if you were him and go for a 3-peat? And 2, do you think Trevor Lawrence is worth $50 million a year? That is a great question that I don't think anybody, including the Jacksonville Jaguars, have the answer to right now. So I'll take them in the order that you asked them. So your first question was Dan Hurley, the current UConn Huskies men's college basketball head coach. They've won the last 2 national championships in a row. They've been dominant. They just continue to churn out talent, and that Big East Conference, that's all of a sudden one of the better conferences in all of college basketball. And he's building a bully at UConn right now, is Dan Hurley. He's worked his way up the food chain. He's from a very prestigious, college basketball family. His brother played at Duke, played in the league for a little while. His dad is a legendary coach. So he's worked his way up the food chain, gotten to this spot, worked his ass off to get there, and now he's reaping the fruit. He's bearing that fruit from all of the hard labor that he's put in. And now the question that we see usually come to these college coaches that have tremendous success is college enough? Does your ego want to test itself and see if you can get it done at the highest level, right? Billy Donovan, was killing it at Florida, and the allure of the NBA came calling, and he took an opportunity to jump at, a chance to coach in the big leagues and see if he could get it done, right? John Calipari had, coached in the NBA once upon a time to try his hand at the NBA to see if he could do it. A host of other guys, powerhouse college basketball coaches tried their hand at the NBA, and it's not the same, right? Another example was the Celtics general manager, who, team president, really, I think he is now. Left Butler, ended up the head coach of the Celtics, did a phenomenal job, but he realized, I think I want to be in the front office, which was a crazy move. We had never seen anything like that. But it's a really, like, Coach K, the NBA came calling for him multiple times, and every time he was able to, I think he was able to quell his desires by being the USA coach, right? Coaching the USA teams and things of that nature. I think it made it a lot easier for him to say, I'm good, right? Got my little fix in. I'm going to stay at Duke. But Hurley is one of those guys that I think his ego is probably like, I know I can do it at the NBA level. So why not take that leap? And they're going to throw a lot of money at him, and they're going to make it very enticing. And who doesn't want to be the head coach of the LA Lakers, right? Who doesn't want to coach LeBron James? Because more than likely LeBron's coming back to LA. Who doesn't want to coach Anthony Davis, right? Who doesn't feel like, you give me those 2 guys and a few other really good players, who doesn't think I can get it done? But you got to ask yourself, am I ready for all that the NBA entails? Am I ready for all that comes with the NBA? It's not like college where you got these guys' attention. They're young, they're hungry. You can coach them hard, and they're okay with that, because Dan Hurley's a demanding head coach. And as we know, these pros run the league. So the only way you're able to establish yourself as a coach that can coach hard get his message across, and not have the players balk at it is you got to win. And even though you won at the collegiate ranks, those players don't give a shit about your collegiate pedigree. What have you done in the NBA? And if I'm Dan Hurley, you got to weigh the pros and the cons. Only he and his family can know what's best for them. I can tell you this. If he takes the job at the Lakers, if he takes the job with the Lakers and it doesn't work out, he'll never have another opportunity like the one he has currently at UConn. And that's the thing you have to kind of figure out, right? Like, he'll get another high-profile college basketball job, but will the program be what it is currently at UConn is what you have to ask yourself. It's an ever-changing landscape in college sports, not just basketball, but just collegiate sports in general. It's an ever-changing landscape. And you leave for 2-3 years, the game passes you by, somebody's taking over your mantle, some other program is now getting all of the high-level recruits, and it could change that quick. You come back in, you get you a nice job, but it's not the same, right? It's very few guys that leave for the professional ranks and then end up coming back to the collegiate ranks and getting it done like Nick Saban did, right? Won a national championship with LSU, left for the NFL, didn't get it done there. Really, he quit on the NFL. He just said, this shit ain't for me. Because he could have stayed at Miami. They were actually, playing well, and he was turning that program around. And he just said, F this. Alabama's got an opening. I'm not going to get a better job than that. And he bolted, right? Bobby Petrino did the same thing. He was never the same. Bobby Petrino was, you could argue, he had Lamar Jackson. He was at the height of his superpowers at Louisville. He left for the NFL. It didn't work with the Falcons. And he's never been the same coach in college, right? So it's tough when you leave to come back and pick up where you left off. So he's got to ask himself, is the best opportunity for me to stay where I am? I'm happy. We're having success. I'm okay not being an NBA head coach, or the NBA is calling you. And like Pookie, it's just calling me. Can he stay away? You're not going to get a better offer than the Los Angeles Lakers, right? A more high profile, I'll say, offer than the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll see. Who knows? He could be the next Brad Stevens, go to an NBA team, coach there for a couple years, and then end up in their front office. I doubt that. You know what? Hurley strikes me as a guy, and I'll just tell you what my prediction is right now. He strikes me as a guy that is going to struggle with this decision, but ultimately he's going to take the Lakers job. I think that he could be using the Lakers as leverage to get a massive deal to stay at UConn, become the highest paid coach in college basketball. But ultimately, I think the allure of the NBA and just proving like he's conquered college basketball. He's won it, and it hasn't really been close the last 2 years. They were the best team in college basketball by far and away. At least last year for sure. Probably the last 2 years, they've been the most dominant team. But definitely this past year, they were the best team in college basketball. They were a runaway favorite, and it wasn't close. You've conquered college basketball. In his mind's eye, he's probably saying, can I do it at the NBA level? I think he's going to take the opportunity to try and see. So your second question was Trevor Lawrence. Is he worth $50 million a year? That's a hell of a question. I don't know. I don't even think the Jacksonville Jaguars know, to be honest with you. Like, when I think about Trevor Lawrence, right now he's on that Baker Mayfield type of track. Year one was a disaster. So it's been the opposite for him. Baker was good in year one, not so much in year two, really good in year three. And then the floor, the bottom literally fell out in year four, and he was on a different team by year five, right? So for Trevor, year one was terrible because he had Herb as his head coach, who was just as clueless as he could be at the NFL level. And then second year with Doug Peterson was phenomenal. They make the playoffs, have that great, incredible comeback win a playoff game, and had the Chiefs on the ropes, similar to Baker Mayfield. I mean, there's a lot of parallels between those two. Baker Mayfield in his third season, which was his best year, won the playoff game in wild card weekend, then went to Kansas City and had the Chiefs on the ropes. And Trevor Lawrence's best season to date, his second season, went to the playoffs, won the first game, had the Chiefs on the ropes in Arrowhead, and couldn't finish the job. Year three, similar to Baker, very disappointing. Dealt with injuries. Baker dealt with injuries in that fourth year. Trevor dealt with injuries last year, was up and down. They started out like they were going to repeat as division winners, and then the bottom fell out of their season, and they allowed the Texans to come back and steal that division from them. So now everybody's looking at Trevor and saying, all right, well, who's the real Trevor Lawrence? Is it years 1 and 3, or is it the guy that we saw in year 2? That was fantastic. I think he's more the guy that we saw in year 2. And I appreciated him battling through injuries last year. But it wasn't clean last season. Even before some of the injuries, it wasn't great. So this is a big year for him. And, they thought they were going to be able to retain Calvin Ridley. He ended up leaving for Tennessee in free agency. I think they drafted a receiver at some point in the draft. I know they signed Gabe Davis in free agency. So I think they've surrounded him with enough talent. But at the end of the day, this is a big season for Trevor Lawrence. Because I think if the Jags had it their way, they would have paid him this offseason, but they are not sure right now. And you can't invest too soon and end up in a Carson Wentz type situation. You just got to know. And even in the Wentz situation, he had proven himself as a commodity when they gave him the deal a year early, essentially. That hasn't been the case for Trevor Lawrence. If he were coming off the season that he had 2 years ago, this past year, he'd be getting a deal this offseason. But he's not. He's coming off of a down year. They missed the postseason. He didn't play up to the level of expectations that they had for the Jaguars. And I think they need to see it. They believe in him. I know that organization believes in Trevor Lawrence. I believe in him too, by the way, just so we're clear. But he's going to have to prove it again, and I think he will this year. I think he'll bounce back this year. As long as he stays healthy, I think he'll play well, and they'll know that they have their guy. But to give him $50 million a year right now, and you still have questions, you can't do that. And so right now, is he worth $50 million? No. Next offseason, will he be worth 50? Yeah, he probably will. That's my guess. The Black Al B. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. The Black Al B writes, Lou, my guy, what's going on, Black Al B? Says, all the talk about new QBs as a guy with a team who has one, I'm more intrigued with the defense and Dallas Turner. Well, you should be more intrigued by the defense because there ain't shit going on with your young quarterback yet, right? It ain't shit going on with J.J. McCarthy. He's third on the depth chart right now behind Sam Darnold and Nick Mullins. So, yeah, of course you would I ain't worried about that right now. Let's talk about this defense, though. And look, if you know that you could potentially be starting Sam Darnold week 1, your defense is going to have to be massive, right? So, yeah, I would be worried about the defense as well. I want to know about what Dallas Turner's doing. Can he fill the shoes? And these are some massive shoes that Danielle Hunter left. Can he come in here? And you guys, like I said, signed a lot of free agents, and you spent on the defensive side of the football in free agency. Andrew Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner was a draft pick, and I think you signed Jonathan Grenard in free agency. So you spent some money, right? You need that to pan out. You need guys to step up and help this defense get to a place where it can maybe carry the load until the offense is ready to pick up the slack, right? We'll see. You know, one thing we know is Justin Jefferson is going to ball no matter who's tossing him the rock. I love what I saw out of Addison as a number 2. He's exactly the kind of compliment you need to Justin Jefferson. So you got that right. And then you still have the other receiver, Osborne, right? So you got a nice little trio there of receivers, and I still can't believe my eyes are still adjusting to the fact that Aaron Jones is the starting running back of the Minnesota Vikings. Like when I was looking at the Winter Warrior uniforms and I saw 33, I was like, Dalvin Cook don't wear 33 no more, right? He dropped 33 like a bad habit after season 2, right? Then I was like, wait a minute, he's not there anyway. 33. Oh my God, it's Aaron Jones. What is he doing there? Like my brain is still adjusting to seeing him in a Vikings uniform. That's still crazy for me. But he's a massive upgrade over what you had at the running back position last season. If he's healthy, he's dynamic, not just as a runner, but also as a guy that can catch it out of the backfield. So way better than Alexander Madison. So I think that you're upgraded offensively. You know, we know TJ Hawkinson's a stud. And so I think you've got everything you need offensively to be a problem. It's just now getting something out of the quarterback position. Who knows what happens? But until you figure that out, you need the defense to play ball. So we'll see what happens with your defense and if they're ready to answer the call, because maybe the offense won't be initially. Maybe you're going to need the defense to step up, right? Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, love late night, Lou. YouTube. Whoa, what are we doing now? Hey, wait a minute. Duncan, how many drinks we in, bro? How many we done knocked back? You on that hard stuff tonight, too. We ain't drinking beer tonight. We on some hard liquor. What we got going on, man? Clearly, you don't have to work today, or you already worked today, and you knocking them back because you already getting crazy on me. What are you talking about, man? Uh-oh. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I only asked because I heard a beat reporter say that there were 4 new starters on the O-line. Yeah, you heard John Keim say that. It was 4 new starters. One of the press conferences, I want to say he asked the question of head coach Dan Quinn, and he said there are 4 new offensive line starters, which he said that I think he misspoke when he said that, because I did the same thing you did. Like I said 4, and I started doing the math, and I'm like, if Wiley is at right tackle and Cosme's at right guard, then it's only 3, right? So this is what I told myself, and Quinn did not correct him because Quinn's not trying to get into the specifics. So if you say it's 4, it's 4. I'm not going to argue with you, because we don't know who's starting yet. But I'm just going to tell you, and you've been here longer than me, so you would know. If you say it's 4, then it's 4, but it's really 3. But when he said 4 and DQ co-signed it by not refuting it, he co-signed it essentially. I was like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe, just maybe, Andrew Wiley isn't penciled in as the starting right tackle. But I just think John Keim misspoke, because the belief right now, until otherwise notified, is that the right side of the offensive line is going to remain the same from last year, which is right tackle Andrew Wiley, right guard Sam Cosmi. And if that's the case, then those were week 1 starters last year, so you'd only have 3 new starters on the offensive line. So, yeah, I heard the same thing you heard, David. So I know exactly why you asked. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, please fix your stadium. My grandma is tired of having sewage dripping on her from the upper deck. Now, that's nasty. What do you think I meant by nasty? Meh. I don't know what you were talking about in your first super. I know what you're talking about here, and I can address that. They're making alterations to the stadium, and our owner Josh Harris and his supporting cast have gotten to work on trying to make the necessary adjustments to the FedEx Field, or excuse me, Commanders Field experience. It's not the best. It won't be the best. It's an old, dilapidated stadium. It was never really a great stadium to begin with when it first opened back in 97, I believe. It was always in a bad spot. The construction of it was thrown up and thrown together. It never felt state of the art, even when it was one of the newer stadiums in the NFL. And so it's a dump, as I've said, but it's our dump, right? But they're fixing it. They're doing as much as they can to make it feel like home until we get a brand new stadium. But that's still not going to be for probably another 7 to 8 years. So they understand the assignment. They know that in order to have a true home field advantage, you need to first win, because if you win, they will come. And then second, they need to feel like this stadium gives me a reason to want to leave my house. If not, I'll just watch the game on television. So they're doing what they need to do. They're trying. All right. That's all you can ask for, is they're trying. John Perez. And yes, the sewage leaking out of the pipes is pretty nasty. That's some nasty work. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JP, writes, Lou, you better get your JD5 jersey, LOL. Those things are selling fast like hotcakes, as they should. And I'm hoping the young man goes out and makes it worth everybody's while. The hype is starting to build as he continues to progress. It's only going to get louder and louder. And I love it. You know, this is what this season is all about. This will be one of the most anticipated seasons for the Washington Commanders in recent memory. You probably got to go all the way back to 2012, to be honest with you, for the last season that had this much anticipation, with all of the changes to the front office, to the coaching staff, and obviously Jaden Daniels coming in here. It all feels new because it is new. And I think the fan base is really going to rally behind it. The only thing that they're missing now is, this would feel so much better if we had, just give me the Washington football team look, right? If they had the classic look, I think fans would be able to get behind it even more, right? But again, if you win, even that crowd who's complaining about how we look or the name, even they'll be able to look past it for at least, live in the moment. And then after it's all done, they'll go back to bitching about the name and the look. But you want them to stop bitching about it, you got to win some football games. So I'm pretty sure when we get to the end of the season, if this kid's playing well, he'll have among the highest selling jerseys in the NFL. When's the last time? You probably got to go to Chase Young when he was a rookie, won Rookie of the Year. That's probably the last time Washington's had a player in the top 10 of jersey sales. And I don't even know if Chase Young was in the top 10 that year. That's my guess, is if he wasn't in the top 10, he's the guy that's been the closest, I'd say, Chase Young. We don't have players in the top 10 or remotely even close most of the time, year in and year out. And I think, Jaden Daniels will be one of the first that we've had probably since Robert Griffin III. Mike Jank, been a member for 19 months. Thank you for being a member. Appreciate you. Mike Jank writes, Louie Lou. Well, Mike, What's up, my guy? What's going on with you, man? Been a little while. Good to hear from you as always. Been a minute. Facts. Thanks for the trade for White Jesus. LOL. Hey, we appreciate you. You know, it was beneficial both ways. You got what you needed. And Cooper DeJean, we got what we needed. And Mike Sane was still, and Ben Sennett. So that trade worked out for all parties involved. I may be thanking you by the time we get to mid, October. Like, yo, Eagles, really appreciate y'all for letting us pick up that extra second. Really needed that, right? Like, this dude is killing it. So we'll see. Y'all may end up getting the better of the deal. Only time will tell, but I feel damn good about what we got on our end. And, we'll see how y'all feel about what y'all got. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, JP, writes, if my Lakers are hiring Hurley, then we better get a good enough roster around the two big guns because I cannot deal with another early playoff exit. I surmise that you're going to see changes. D'Lo will be out of there. They'll figure out how they want to kind of reconstruct the pieces around AD and LeBron. They may take a swipe at one of these big name players that's out here. I could see them, taking a run at somebody like a Trae Young or someone like that. We'll see what the offseason brings, but I wouldn't count them out of getting a really good player. Like, they've done a masterful job of getting players that I didn't think they'd be able to get based off of their current situation and how they're set up. And somehow they're able to coerce teams into making trades that I don't think necessarily make sense for them, but it makes all the sense in the world for the Lakers. So we'll see what this offseason brings for the Lakers. I'll say this, priority number one for them after they find their head coach, whomever it is, whether it's JJ Redick or Dan Hurley or whomever, after they find their head coach, priority number one is getting LeBron back in the fold. And I think ultimately LeBron is going to come back, right? He's got a player option. He could opt in. My guess is he's probably going to want to do a new deal that is going to allow him to finish his career, probably a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year player option like the last one he signed, maximize his money once again, and we'll see, where he ends up down the line, where his son ends up, where Bronny ends up, all of that good stuff. But I still think LeBron ends up in LA, but I wouldn't rule out him ending up wherever his son is. I think he's serious about playing with his son. I think a lot of people are like, yeah, that's cute. But the reason why so many teams are working Bronny James out is because of the allure of potentially attracting LeBron James. Bronny is simply bait. And if you can get LeBron to agree to whatever you need him to agree to play with his son, if that means more to him than money, you got him. The Suns can't afford LeBron James. They can barely afford a quality role player, let alone LeBron James. If they draft Bronny, though, maybe LeBron cuts him a break. Can't see LeBron cutting him a break, though. But who knows, right? There's no way LeBron's joining that crew and taking a league minimum, essentially, is what he'd have to do in order to fit in Phoenix in their cap situation. They're paying 3 dudes damn near, 2 of them are making over 50. I think Beal and KD are making over 50 and Book is at like 48. There's no way you can get LeBron on board. So all signs to me point to LeBron heading back to LA. And if they do that, I think they're going to find a way to put some more talent around them. Brandon Jackson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Brendan writes, other than winning the Super Bowl, what would you consider a successful season for each NFC East teammate? So we'll work our way from the bottom to the top. For the Commanders, obviously, it's establishing that Jaden Daniels is the guy. Like, that should be the number one takeaway from this season. Whether you win 3 games, 7 games, 11 games, doesn't matter. Jaden Daniels, you need to leave this season saying, all right, we got our quarterback. Now, let's build, right? If you're the Giants, you need to establish everything around the quarterback position, because I don't think the quarterback is currently on the roster. It'd be great if, the second act of oh man, what's my guy's name that was in Seattle? Drew Lock is fantabulous. And he's ready to have one of those second acts that we see from time to time in the NFL, where it doesn't work out for a guy in his initial stop. He, kind of buys his time as a backup, learns from some of the mistakes he made, and then he grows, similar to Geno Smith, right? And so maybe he's ready to take that step and become a quality NFL starter. But the likelihood is it ain't Daniel Jones, it ain't Drew Lock, but you need Malik Neighbors to show. You need that offensive line that you've revamped this year to start to show signs of life. It'd be nice to see, the run game be solid for you. You need to see some of the pieces, right? You drafted the kid last year, Jalen Hyatt. Let's see him start to develop. The defense, you poured resources into that defense, right? You went out and you traded for Brian Burns, and you've solidified the cornerback position, and you went out and drafted a safety. And so you've done all of these things, right? You drafted a corner, you drafted a safety, you signed Brian Burns. So you're putting in the work, right, to make this a formidable defense. You want to see all of this stuff kind of come to fruition. And even if you don't have the quarterback, you've got all the pieces around that position, and then you can go and try to strike next year, right? That'll be like growth for the Giants this season. And you want it to be a season in which you win enough that Brian Daboll isn't fired and you're not resetting all of this next year. If this is a terrible season, Daboll could be out in New York. So you'd like to not have that happen and have change all over again, but it is what it is, right? For Dallas and Philadelphia, it's Super Bowl or bust for both of those teams. But if you're the Dallas Cowboys, and you said except for winning the Super Bowl, so if you're the Dallas Cowboys, I think just getting to the NFC Championship game, breaking through, finally playing for a chance to go back to the Super Bowl or making it there is the goal, right? They've won 12 games 3 years in a row. They've been eliminated in the first in wild card weekend 2 of those 3 years. They haven't made it to the championship game since 95 or 96. So for them, that is the thing that is of the utmost importance. You do that, and everybody's back. Mike McCarthy's back. Dak Prescott's back. Michael Parsons gets the big deal next offseason. CeeDee Lamb's probably going to get his deal this offseason. And everybody's feeling really good about the future. If that doesn't happen, question marks about Dak Prescott's future start to arise. Mike McCarthy's future is in jeopardy and in question. Will they go get somebody like Bill Belichick or some other coach out there? Who knows? Like, it could unravel very quickly. So for them, it's win big and at least get to the NFC Championship game. And then for the Eagles, I really think that for them, it's establishing some sort of continuity. For, I want to say, the 3rd, maybe 4th year in a row, they have significant change on their roster from a coaching standpoint, right? So let's see. 4 years ago, you had who was the coach in 2020 before they hired Nick Sirianni in 21? Who was the coach in 2020? Why am I blanking on who the coach was? Doug Peterson, right? He had just won the Super Bowl not too long ago, and you fired him. So Peterson, you had Peterson there in 20. You fire him. You bring in Nick Sirianni in 2021, and he tries to put in his system. It doesn't work. Hurts gets some mop-up duty at the end of 20, ends up being a starter in 21. It's not working early in the season. They change their whole philosophical approach midway through the season, start becoming a run dominant team, using Hurts's legs, using the run game, make the playoffs, get destroyed by Tampa, but at least they made it, right? The next year, you got Shane Steichen in there calling the plays. He does a phenomenal job. And you got the head coach of the Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon, running the defense. It all comes together. You go to the Super Bowl. Everything's wonderful. Steichen gets the job. Gannon gets the job. And now you got change all over again, defensively and offensively. Brian Johnson's promoted to offensive coordinator. Last year, you had Sean Desai as your defensive coordinator. I don't know what the hell they did to Sean Desai in the middle of the season and decided to bring in Matt Patricia, but that was an abject disaster and fail. Brian Johnson, I don't think, was allowed to do the things he wanted to do. That was a mess. And once again, Jalen Hurts, who has seen change just about every year of his football career since high school, continues to see change. I read an article today where he talked about the offense is 95% brand spanking new. None of the same concepts, none of the same shit they were doing. Obviously, they brought in a brand new offensive coordinator that they got from the Chargers. He was in Dallas for a number of years, and Kellen Moore. So another new offense, another new defense. Vic Fangio comes over from the Dolphins, and it's all new in Philadelphia again. And if you're the Eagles, you just want some sort of continuity moving into next season. Like, damn it, man. Can we just not be changing coordinators? And if this doesn't go well, it'll be all new again next year because they're going to fire Nick Sirianni. He barely kept his job this offseason. So if it doesn't go well this year, if they don't win big, if they think he's the weak link, they'll fire him and it'll be new guys in there all over again. So I like that the Eagles keep changing their staff and personnel like we change underwear. Keep doing it every year. It'll stop them from growing. You know, it'll stunt any growth that they're having if they got to continue to swap out OCs and DCs every year. But if you're the Eagles, outside of winning big, you just want continuity, right? David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you. My guy, David, writes, I'm in the Tampa area, so I'll be at the game for week 1. Are you going to be there, Lou? Negative. I will not be there. I will be there in spirit. I will be watching at home. But you know what I'm going to tell you? I mean, maybe you don't, because I know you just got here not too long ago. But I'd like to say this to you now, just in case you're not here to get the speech from me when it gets closer to that time. You got one mission to do. You got one objective. Go in there, retrieve the dub, and come out unharmed. Okay? It's all we ever do on the road is we just go into hostile environments, go in there, get the dub, extract the dub, and get out of there. All right? If you have to abort the mission, because overall health is the number one goal. You got to come out of there healthy, right? But if you're able to go in there, extract the dub, and come out of there, get her done. You got one job to do. I always say, you know what it is. You got one job. You know the mission. You know the assignment. Go ahead and get it done. So a lot of people, I've been shocked at how many people have said, yeah, I'll be at that Tampa game. I already got my tickets. At least 10 Washington fans have said that to me this offseason. At least 10, and I believe every single one of them. I've said this over the years. I've been impressed with the amount of Washington fans that exist around the globe. We're a pretty big brand outside of our own market. I don't know why I'm so surprised. We used to be a pretty big deal, right? We didn't always used to look like this. We didn't always used to play like this. We used to be a pretty big deal. So people are everywhere. They've been dispersed. And when we go on the road, there's usually a large contingency of Washington fans. So that'll be fun watching week 1. Mike Jank, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Mike Jank, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, writes, what you think about Kellen, Lou? I don't love him. I don't hate him. I don't think he's terrible at his job. I just don't think he's great at it. I think he is one of these guys because he's a former quarterback, and I haven't met a former quarterback yet, maybe outside of Sean Payton. I haven't met a former quarterback turned offensive play caller / head coach who doesn't like to throw that bitch, who doesn't love to throw the football as a former quarterback. I ain't met that dude yet other than Sean Payton. Most of these coaches can't help themselves. I need to throw the football. Even when the run's working, we got to throw this thing, man. Right? So one of the issues the Eagles have had over the last 2 years, really last year in particular, for whatever reason, 2 years ago, they were really, really exceptional running the football, and they were really good about sticking to the run. Last year, for whatever reason, they refused to run the football. And they had success in games. I just remember the start to the season. Week 1, you didn't run it against the Patriots. You almost lost that game. Should never have been as close as it was. You forgot about DeAndre Swift. And in the next 2 weeks, DeAndre just goes bananas. Kills the Vikings, kills the Buccaneers. And I remember saying, he ain't doing that to us, and he didn't do that to us. But it wasn't because y'all didn't – it wasn't because we, like, shut him down. Y'all just didn't give it to him enough, right? And that was the theme the remainder of the season. He just didn't get it enough for whatever reason. And I think that continues, even with Saquon Barkley. Now, the beauty of Saquon is, which, I mean, that still existed with DeAndre Swift last year, is you can throw it to him out of the backfield and he can catch it too. But maybe because he's a more high-profile back, you'll have to get it to him. But I could see games where Saquon didn't touch it nearly enough because of Kellen Moore. So he's a really solid offensive coordinator. And generally, if you give him talent, which the Eagles have, he'll produce big numbers for you. He did it in Dallas. You give him the talent, and he'll produce some big-time offensive numbers. So he's fully capable. But we'll see if he can remain somewhat balanced. That's been his issue. Balance. Anyway, I digress. Let's see. I'm gonna take a couple of comments. See if I can grab one or two of these. Let's see. Let's see. All right. John Wynn says, in my opinion, Justin Fields should be a starter in Pittsburgh because he has good running skills, but you got to be able to throw it too. And, we'll see what happens. We'll see what what ultimately happens in Pittsburgh. John also writes, Sam Howell and Mike McDonald have a good relationship together. We'll see if that turns into anything of note and if that ultimately allows him to have a shot to be the starter there. Ghost Rider says, you think Joe will be a better DC than Jack? Because I think the defense will get better, get after QBs fast, without question. I don't even think that's a real conversation to have at this point. Mando fan, hey Lou, what's the realistic expectation for when we get to the playoffs? I think it's year 3 because the Lions struggled year 2 and then showed flashes at the end, but only came on this year. You can't just base it off of what Detroit did, but that's the timeline. Generally speaking, when you look at sustainable turnarounds, it's you, and when you start at the bottom, like we're doing currently, right? We were 4-13 last year. It usually is a 3-year process, generally speaking. I just look at the 49ers. When Adam Peters was a part of that turnaround, they were 2-14 when they showed up on the scene. When he and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch showed up in 2016 into the 2017 season. So it was 2017 was their first year there. They were 2-14 in 2016 with the Chipster as their head coach. And that first year they were awful. The second year you could see flashes, and year 3 they made it to the Super Bowl. So the Lions, year 1, awful. Year 2, you saw flashes, just like you said. They started out 1-6. We were the one win they had in 2022. And then they finished up the season 9-8, winners of 8 out of their final 10. And then we saw what happened last year. They were literally 7 minutes away from the Super Bowl in year 3. So, yeah, year 3 is what I'm looking at. I think we're going to compete for something meaningful in year 2. We may not make it, but the expectations will be a lot higher than they are this year. I have no expectations this year. Just going to enjoy the ride. If the trend continues for the teams that I root for that are going through this rebuilding process, Baby Braves, Memphis Grizzlies, or we call them the next gen Grizz next gen, right? So we kept that GNG moniker, Grizz next gen. If we stick with those themes, those teams got to the playoffs a year earlier than anybody projected them to, especially the Baby Braves. If that's the case, then it'll be year 2. But I like you think it's year 3. Personally, I think it's year 3. So we'll see, though. Obviously, that's subject to change. But right now, it's probably more likely year 3. Let's see. RHS Chess writes, what prospect gets you more excited? Thrashing the Lions / Ben Johnson's offense or beating extremely Buns whenever he gets back in the NFL? Eric Bieniemy doesn't move me. He doesn't move. I don't have any ill will towards that man. I've already said that. Like, if he comes back into the NFL, it won't be in a coordinator capacity. And even if it is, I don't care. It is what it is. It's gonna be Ben Johnson, because what he did was he made a decision that he felt like was best for him, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. It was the way he went about it. If he would have just done it in a respectful manner, that we could all say, you know what, he decided he wanted to go back to Detroit, I think most of us would have been like, damn, we were really hoping he'd be the next coach, but okay, we can live with that. The way he did it was so classless and immature that you're like, nah, bro, it's on site. So it's definitely Ben Johnson for me. This will be the last one. RHS Chess. Right. What kicker do you think we should sign? Jake Bates or Joey Slide? Pretty sure he'll get dropped as Pat's already got one, or someone else. We'll see. You know, we'll see. One of the things that I didn't talk about, I should have talked about it today when I talked about special teams, is the thing that they were excited about with the kicker that we just released, Brandon McManus, is he had a great pop-up kick. And he could angle it, and you know, he had the ability to manipulate the football, unlike a lot of kickers on kickoffs. So he talked about that when we signed him. Like he said, this new rule that potentially could be put in is I'm made for it because I can kick the football in various different ways. So I was actually looking forward to seeing what he could do, and could he benefit us in that regard. We'll never know now, right? But as far as Bates or Slide, I don't know. Like, we'll see. The kicker could be Ramiz Ahmed. He could be the next kicker of this team. So we'll see what happens. Mike Jenks says Osborne is with the Pats. Oh, okay. I didn't know he was a free agent. Feel like he's been there a number of years, though. So I wouldn't be shocked if he signed a free agent deal with the New England Patriots. Whoever is their third receiver is probably really solid. I mean, their top two dudes are beasts anyway. So I appreciate that information, though. So I'm not out here spreading misinformation. A little too late for that now. But at least I know now. Thank you for that, Mike Jink. Anyway, let's get to our final segment of the show. And that, of course, is garbage time. So I know everybody has seen the Winter Warrior all white alternative uniforms that the Minnesota Vikings have, previewed here over the last 24 to 48 hours. And it's sent social media ablaze. People are talking about it, asked everybody how they felt. And really, for the most part, everyone was like, yeah, those are fire. Those are dope. And so I said, we talk about it on the podcast. Here we are. So if you haven't seen it, let's take a look. Let's dig in. And then I've got a larger question to ask, you know, after we go through them. But let's go through these with a fine-tooth comb, because the question is, are they the coldest all whites in the NFL? We've seen some dope ones, including the Cincinnati Bengals all whites with the white helmet, which were just absolutely flames, right? GMF, for those of you who are over on MusicHead University, you know what that means. But have the Vikings jump to the top of the line, to the front of the line? Let's take a look. All right, at these Viking jerseys. So let's talk about why they look the way that they look. So I've only got one, and I'm nitpicking. I've only got one small gripe with these jerseys, and it's a tiny one. Okay. So uniform details. The all white helmet. A metallic gray stripe emulates the metal strips on early Viking battle helmets. The custom pearlized white finish white finish is juxtaposed by glossy horns outlined in metallic purple. This marks the first time in team history of debuting a non-purple helmet. Those helmets are stupid, man. Boy, they're tough. Tough like Tuscan leather. White, purple, and metallic gray color palette. All warm colors have been removed, marking the very first Vikings uniform that does not utilize gold. The metallic gray is a nod to ancient Viking armor. So I love the icy gray, right? That they have, or they call it metallic gray. It's dope. Here's my only gripe. That Vikings that you see right above the 24, you can't see it. They put it in metallic gray. I would have preferred that to be gold, the only gold on the uniform, but I get it. You didn't want any gold. They were the point of this winter warrior is to have no warm colors, which included gold. So they should have made the Vikings purple so you can see it. You can't even see it. That's my only gripe, is I can't see that Vikings nameplate there on the front. It's dope. Should have just been purple. But again, anytime you can incorporate that metallic gray, I get it, man, because it's clean. It's clean. Updated Viking script. The Vikings word mark on the front of the uniform has been updated to match the skull font numerals and embroidery in metallic gray, and that's the same thing I was referencing. The wording, the font on the word mark is dope. It matches the jersey numbers and the all of the names on the back and how it's all and how it looks. The problem is you can't see it because it's in gray and the jerseys are all white, so it just kind of meshes with it. It doesn't stand out to me. Icy numbers. This is pretty dope. The jersey numbers feature an icicle drip, accents that are a unique twist on the Vikings' existing skull font. Look at the numbers. You see the little icy drip, the little sharp points on the 2, and then on the 2 at the bottom, and the 2 in the corner at the bottom. So both the left and the right corners, you got an accentuated one down at the left corner, and in the right corner is a little point there. Then down and where it curves up, there's another little, icicle drip, if you will. Then on the 4, you see that drip there too. And they got another one down at the bottom corner that you can't see. And then on the inside, they also have on the 4, they got an icicle drip there. I think that's pretty dope. All right, the little icicle drip. And then it says Nordic knot pattern. Nordic knots adorn the back neckline. The pattern includes 3 shields that represent Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell's mantra: our way, our process, our team. So that's the little thing that you see back here, these little interlocking weaves here that you see on the back of the nameplate. So this is what everything kind of stands for. So that's pretty dope, right? So let's look at the jersey from different angles and get it in its full splendor. So this is Byron Murphy kind of showing us the front of the jersey a little bit. And you see the ice drip, on the 7. You can see the Vikings right here. Again, that's him standing still with the camera focused in on him. As they're running around on the field, you're not going to see that. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you'll be able to see it a lot better. But right now, it just kind of blends with the jersey for me. I would have preferred that to be purple, but I guess, the numbers are already purple. You make that purple. It might be too much purple there on the front, but I just love the helmet, man. You see that metallic gray strip down the middle, the Vikings in purple right on the center there. The metallic gray face mask, which is also fire. It's just a clean look, man. It's a really clean look. As we move on to the next look, and this is Justin Jefferson modeling the back of the jersey. So you see the stripe on the helmet. You see the Vikings down there. Again, Jefferson, the skull font there, the 18 with the icicle drips on the number plate there. So again, pretty dope, right? We move on to the side, and I think this is pretty nasty right here. This is kind of where it separates. So you got the metallic gray on which is a staple of Nike. They always like to do this little patch on the side of the shoulder pads on the shoulder of the jerseys. Most NFL jerseys that Nike have designed have this little patch here. You know, if you're a Commanders fan, you know, we got the little patch on the side like this. And most NFL teams have this if Nike designed the uniform. And then they have a stripe. And I think if you're an NFL team and you don't have a stripe on your pants, you're missing out. Like, to me, that's a great opportunity to just give the pants, which are usually plain Jane anyway, to give your pants some flavor, right? Like, don't have your pants be bland. All right, no seasoning at all. Give it some flavor. And this stripe down the side with the purple in the middle outlined by the metallic gray is just, it's a nice touch by Nike. A really nice touch. And so this is what it looks like when you put it all together. Got the helmet. I love the helmet, man. The Viking horn, the strip, the face mask. You got the jersey. You got the stripe. These are fire, man. These are cold. Are they the coldest in the NFL, though, is the question. That's the question we got to ask ourselves. Is this the best all whites in the NFL? So, off the top of the dome, clearly the Bengals and the Vikings, I think probably those two, when it's all said and done, they are probably now in a class of their own. I like the Saints. I'm a sucker for the Saints white on whites that they wear with the gold numbers. I like those outlined in black. I think those are pretty clean. I'm trying to think of any other teams that have a dope white on white concept. The 49ers, when they wear the 95 throwback Dion joints with the embossed red numbers. Those do something to me. You know, those do something to me every time. I see Prime, you know, getting them in with the little steps when they roll those out. That's in that conversation for me too. I don't know though. I think those are the four. If I had to make a top 5 list, let me see if I can find one more. Let me see if I can find one more. Let me go through the teams in the league real quick. I just try to think about when I used to play Madden. Was there a white on white jersey that I would like? I gotta wear that. I used to be a sucker for the Commanders when we were the Redskins, or even the football team when we would wear white on white. Ours was pretty crispy too, but that's dead now, right? So let's see. Cowboys got a pretty nice little Thanksgiving ensemble that they put on from time to time. But let me see. Cowboys, Eagles, Giants. You know what's crazy too is the Giants are wearing them ugly ass red uniforms in week 1 against the Vikings, matter of fact, which is crazy to think when you juxtapose what we've just been exposed to from the Vikings to the Giants and that nasty shit that they got going on with those red uniforms. Let's see. So the NFC East, nobody else. NFC South. I already told you I like the Saints. No for Tampa. Although I bet you some white on white creamsicles would probably be dope, but they don't do that. When they wear the creamsicles, they usually wear the creamsicle top on the white bottom. Panthers, no, and Falcons, no. Although I bet you the Falcons, if they wanted to throw it back and they could probably have a pretty nasty setup, because those 70s helmets, those Falcon helmets from the 70s, the red ones, turn that bitch white. First of all, when they wear those red helmets with the black uniforms, tell me that ain't fire. Now turn that shit white, right? And make the uniforms all white. That probably would be tough. But I don't see them doing that. NFC West, Seattle, no. 49ers, I already told you they're in my top 5 with their white on whites from 95. Rams, no. And Cardinals, no. NFC North, Bears, no. Packers, no. Lions, no. And Vikings, obviously, are in the mix. Here, AFC East, Bills, no. Jets, I like their white on whites, but I don't think they're in this conversation. Patriots, no. Although it would be really interesting. Oh, wait, did the Patriots wear white on white with their throwbacks? You know, the red uniforms with the Patriot hiking the ball. That helmet is already white. Have they wore white on white with that? Every time we see that throwback, it's usually with the red tops, which them shits are fire. But I wonder if they've ever done white on white with that. That would be, I'd probably put them in the top 5 if they've done white on white with that. I don't think we've ever seen them do white on white with that, though. And then the Dolphins, no. Even though when they throw it back to their merino type uniforms in white, those are pretty slick, but nah. AFC West, Chiefs, no. Raiders, no. Chargers, no. Even though they got a couple of nice uniforms. And then the Broncos, no. AFC North, Steelers, no. Ravens, no. Bengals already in the top 5. And Browns, no. And then the AFC South, Colts, no. Jags, no. Titans, yo. If they were to ever take those Houston Oilers, love your blues, and turn them all white, that probably would make it to the top 5. If they wanted to do it, they could do it. They could definitely do it. But they always wear the love your blue uniforms with the white pants. I don't think we've ever seen them throw it back and wear white on white. And then the Houston Texans, nah. So, boy, I think if I had to go one more, it'd either be, because I think Dallas is more gray. I think it's like that bluish, grayish. I don't think it's actually white. But the helmet is white, though, when they do that. Maybe it is white. That old 94 with the star, the patch on the shoulder, that shit's fire, bro. It's a couple of teams that if they played around with it, they could definitely enter the top 5. But man, boy, I want to see these janks in person. I want to see them on my television screen. Like, pictures might not do it justice. Right now, the Bengals are still out in front, but if I see these joints and I'm like, yo, they're everything I thought they were when I saw the still photos of them, and then some, I got a feeling that these jerseys are going to be the coldest all whites in the league. I got a feeling that these are going to end up being it right here. God, these are clean. We'll see. We'll see. Right? I wonder when they're going to wear them for the first time, when they're going to bust them out. We don't play the Vikings this year, right? I don't think so. I hope we don't, because it would be our luck that because I know the Bengals are going to wear their white on whites on our ass. Monday Night Football at home in the jungle. Week 3, you know they busting them shits out on our head. I just hope that they're not. Every time somebody wears a throwback, it's always on us, it feels like. When the Bears dropped their orange on orange with the orange helmets, that shit was on us. Now, we beat them, but they still was looking crispy that night. The Giants wore their throwback, championship blue uniforms. They wore them shits on us last year. You know what, too? The Giants white on whites from the championship whites from the Lawrence Taylor years. Those are fire, but they don't have a white helmet, though. In order to qualify for this, it's got to be all white. Helmet, too. Helmet included. And I think that's what's going to get most teams. Like Dallas has a white helmet with their ensemble, which is why I think Dallas would probably round out the top 5. A lot of these teams don't have a white helmet. I want one of these. I mean, shit, if we can't have our traditional setup, then give me some flavor then. Shit. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on the 424th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show as much as I enjoyed doing it. I appreciate y'all kicking it with the kid. Over 150 of y'all joining me on a Friday night. That's crazy work. I really appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. If you haven't already done so, do me a favor. Hit the like button before you leave the premises. That is greatly appreciated. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys next week. We will have had game 2 of the NBA Finals in the books. So we'll come back and discuss that on the other side of the weekend, among other topics. As we get closer, we still got some divisions to knock down from the draft that we haven't done yet. So we'll do some of those things. We got plenty of time, over the next month or so, month and a half roughly, once these teams go dark until training camp. So best believe we'll do that. I got probably, we'll throw back the podcast a couple of times. So y'all know what it is. I really appreciate y'all. Enjoy your weekend. Y'all know what it is. Take care. God bless and good night.